Hello and welcome to another edition of our Talking City podcast with myself, Alex James. Today joined by Chief Manchester City correspondent Simon Bajkowski. Welcome along, Simon. Happy international break.
Thank you very much. It's very exciting, isn't it, with an international break? I'm quite enjoying it because it means that I am not in Bournemouth or Tottenham or Sporting in 6 days, which is what we've got to look forward to when football returns. But I'm sure they'll all be crackers and well worth going. And it's my job, so I should shut up about it.
Yeah, there's people listening who give their arm and a leg, I'm sure, to do what you do daily, Simon.
Yep.
But I do appreciate the rigors of the travel that you go through. So
maybe not what I do, but the job. They'd like the job, just not.
Yeah. Let's get the violins out early, shall we? For your journey times and your trains and your motorway service station visits.
Yes.
As international breaks go, though, this one I guess has been probably a little bit more newsy than perhaps A, we anticipated, and B, they usually are with the events at City off the pitch, and the fact that we've got a new Hugo boss. You see what I did there? I was up all night coming up with that one.
I very much like that. Yeah. I hope that was the back page. Yeah, very newsy international break, and I suppose the top line is that Txiki Begiristain, sporting director since 2012, will be leaving the club at the end of the season, and Hugo Viana, currently at Sporting in Lisbon, will be taking his place. It all happened very quickly, really. Sort of Begiristain's departure is not really a surprise to people at the club because he's kind of been thinking about going for a while and was going to go 5 years ago, and then kind of couldn't resist staying along and being a part of the Guardiola winning everything in sight machine. But he's decided that it's time to go at the end of the season, and in sort of traditional "we are Manchester City and we run things properly" way, they have lined up and secured a successor to wrap two huge news bits into, I think it was 103 words, their statement at the weekend. It was just saying like, yeah, he's gone, he's coming in, as you were.
Yeah. And obviously with the appointment of Viana and the little bit of crossover period that there'll be as well, as you say, it just kind of reinforces that this is a smooth Man City operation, doesn't it? At other clubs this might be fractured, it might drag out, it might play out in public. At City, it's bish bash bosh, on we go.
Yeah, and it's interesting because kind of, whenever Begiristain leaves or Soriano leaves or Pep Guardiola leaves, it will be seen as enormous because they've been such huge figures in the football club in the last 10, 15 years. And so, every empire has to fall at some point. And everyone will be looking to what happens when, one very important piece of the puzzle is removed. I think with Begiristain going, there's, a void that has to be filled. But by bringing in Viana, so he's going to start kind of in February part-time alongside Begiristain up until July, and then he's going to start full-time in July once the season's over and his commitment to Sporting is ended. But as I've been told, Begiristain is kind of not easing out. He's in charge until he's not, and he's in charge until the end of the Club World Cup, which he doesn't have to be. But that means that it is his responsibility, and he will be judged on: does Pep Guardiola renew? If he doesn't, who's the next manager? Does Kevin De Bruyne renew? If he doesn't, or even if he does, who's the player you're signing to bring in instead of him? Do you need to bring in, a Rodri replacement if he's going to be out all this season? If he's going to be not at his best next season, still with issues from this long-term injury? So, it's very much Begiristain's ship until it isn't. But he will be kind of assisted by Viana for 6 months or so before Viana takes over.
Yeah,
so it's interesting.
that's going to be that's going to be invaluable, and B, it will be interesting, as you say, to see that dynamic over the next sort of 6 months. Obviously, they're going to have to be aligned in terms of how things go moving forwards into next season and beyond. And in Viana, they have got somebody who, I think he's 41, is he? But he's certainly doing it, or certainly perceived from the outside looking in to be doing an excellent job at Sporting. Comes with a kind of on the rise pedigree, and seems like a very sensible and smooth appointment. In that sense, in terms of what he'll be able to offer, perhaps a few new ideas, and being able to, if not hit the ground running, then certainly take to the job initially.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a really interesting career. Obviously, I mean, are we one international break too late for Barclays men? But Hugo Viana is a shout for 2 years at Newcastle in the early noughties. But he basically went into being a sporting director kind of within 12 months of retiring. I think he retired at 33 and then went straight into it. He's been at Sporting for a good few years now, and has been, responsible for a lot of good recruitment. And he's dealt with the biggest clubs, selling Bruno Fernandes to Man United. Sold Mateus Nunes on. He's bought Pedro Porro from Manchester City and then sold him on for huge profit to Tottenham. But what is also interesting is that he, is not from within the City Football Group. They have this huge network of teams and clubs and all the expertise. And we've seen with Savinho become the first player to move across. I think there was a lot of, feeling that Txiki, I think he's called, the sporting director at Girona, and Michel, who's the manager there, that the two of them could be kind of the next Txiki and Pep. But that is not the case because Hugo Viana has come in, and that obviously invites speculation as to if you do need another manager. Does Ruben Amorim, who is the current Sporting manager and links with Liverpool and West Ham last year, does he kind of shoot up the list of potential Pep replacements? So yeah, it's a very interesting time at Manchester City.
Speaking of inviting speculation, let's speculate. If I mean, Pep is in the headlines this week with links to England. It's pretty clear from what I think he's spoken to. I think it was Italian television,
Italian TV. Yeah, it's like an Italian Parkinson.
Yeah, it's not where I expected to be reading some Pep Guardiola information from. But
the headline of the show translates something like "What's the weather like?" which is fantastically Italian and fantastic for a chat show. How's the weather? So yeah, and Pep was asked about his City future and whether he would take the England job because obviously Lee Carsley kind of, I don't want to say torpedoed his chances, but the English media were very, very upset that, the English media were very, very happy that Lee Carsley experimented against Greece and then they lost, and the English media were very, very unhappy that he'd experimented, and how dare he experiment, and anything they'd said about the team selection before the game should be disregarded. And then he's kind of talked himself out of the job, while not fully talking himself out of the job. But I think Roy Keane came out and said, go for Pep. Pep's the best manager in the world. Go and get Pep. And Pep's been asked about it, and he said, nope, not decided anything. Still yet to decide at City, where he is out of contract at the end of the season. I think England would make a lot of sense for a manager who would like to manage international football and possibly be an international manager for what could be, an historic World Cup in the United States, and England give him a chance of winning, and he wouldn't have the politics of, say, Spain, or even I don't think you get the pushback that you get in other countries like Brazil or things like that. And he would be working with very talented players. So a lot of reasons why it makes sense. But there have also been a lot of reasons that would make that would have made more sense than him staying for 9 years at Manchester City. And the club are still hopeful that he might be tempted to do 10 or more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The England job does make a lot of sense. I'm just not sure I can 100% see it. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's just because he's been there for so long, and I don't know if he, on some levels, I think, could he be bothered with everything that goes around managing the England national team? Albeit, like you say, he said he wanted to be into international football at some point, and if he was to go in at a Brazil or whatever, the glare and the attention isn't going to be any less, potentially even more, at a country like Brazil or Spain. But I don't know, part of me just thinks I just can't see him managing England. But that's me just speaking rubbish, really.
No, I think.
Go on.
Yeah, I think you sort of wonder. You've always thought if he were to leave City, or when he does leave City, would he go straight into another job? Because when he left Barcelona, he had a sabbatical for a year, and he moved straight from Bayern to City. But that means that he's been in work non-stop since 2013 now, and if international football would seem to some as like a bit of a holiday, because you're not involved sort of as intensely 3 games a week every week. But I don't think someone like Guardiola, I don't know if Guardiola will be able to sort of treat it as more relaxing, or if he would just want to fully relax for a little bit. I mean, the other thing is, if his eye is really set on the England job, then the England job is up, but also it's a question for the FA, because do the FA want a placeholder until 12 months before a major tournament? It's not ideal preparation for a country aiming to win the World Cup to be saying, yeah, well, we're going to get Pep, but like only a year before the tournament starts. And whoever is there until then, like, they're not really doing Pep's job. They're just kind of, well, we've seen for the last 4 England matches what happens. So yeah, it's another interesting thing, but I think it will come to a head relatively soon. It tends to have been the November international break when Guardiola has decided his future in the past. He has been in Dubai at some point in the last 2 weeks. And City will be doing everything they can to keep him. He says he still has a decision to make, but of course once he's made it, City will press on, and I would imagine City would want a situation like with Begiristain, where they can say Pep Guardiola is leaving on the 14th of July after the Club World Cup. This new manager will be starting full time on the 15th of July.
Yeah. And just briefly on that new manager, I mean, you said it all. The talk around Ruben Amorim will only intensify the longer that a decision isn't made public from Pep and City, and B, once Viana starts, or now that Viana has been appointed. Can we see that in terms of, obviously we can see it in terms of there's a clear link, which is why we're asking the question in the first place. He's very highly rated. He's a young coach. He's done really well at Sporting. He's ended a quite a significant title drought in Portugal with Sporting Lisbon. I think he's won 3 league titles now. He's taken them into the knockout stages of the Champions League a couple of times, which is no easy feat, given sort of the disparity between the top European leagues and the Portuguese league, in a league where you have to sell your best players almost every summer. Can we sort of see that jump, as impressive as perhaps he's been at Sporting? It is a big jump to go from Sporting Lisbon to Manchester City, and particularly when you succeed in Pep.
Yeah, I mean, Viana's appointment means that you have to consider it. Like, if we acknowledge that Begiristain and Guardiola has been kind of the key partnership over the last 7 years, and City City made Begiristain their sporting director at a time when sporting directors weren't thought of as essential in football, because like United had Sir Alex Ferguson, who did everything, and Arsene Wenger did everything, and City were like, yeah, the managerial cult ain't all it cracked up to be, and sporting directors are needed, and eventually everyone's come on board with the same idea. And so if the sporting director is responsible for choosing the next manager, the manager who he has had the most success with and who he knows really well is the only one he's worked with for a long time, which is Ruben Amorim. But at the same time, if Pep were to stay, then Viana would be working with Pep, and they would just have to sort of build their relationship. City have been looking at managerial replacements for Pep since probably 2017, 2018, because nobody expects him to stay for 9 years. So it doesn't really go away. I think Amorim does kind of jump up a few rungs because of Viana. But I think they also have, several different roads they could go down that they would make work because of the infrastructure at City that sort of allows for different people to do different jobs.
Yeah. That's the key, isn't it? That's been the key to, well, obviously Pep has, but the structure that City have in place is second to none, you would argue. And in theory, that makes it easier for managerial changes. Not that we've seen one for 10 years. Yeah,
and I mean, you talk about replacing Pep, and Amorim would not be sort of Pep's football. I don't know whether that would be a bad thing. Like, if you are going to replace Pep, do you move on from his type of football a bit? I don't think City are ever going to get to a point where they don't want to play beautiful football because it's part of their brand that they sell around the world. But Pep's football is very unique, and it's going to be hard enough to follow on from him without sort of a Pep light of someone trying to be him but not being quite as good because they're not him. So maybe a sort of cleaner break is better.
As ever in these things, time will tell, and like you said, it's previously sort of been November where we've had a little bit of information come out. What are we now? The middle of October, we've got another international break, and then it's relentless all the way through until the end of July, isn't it? On the pitch. Speaking of your traveling, it's not going to get any easier into 2025. So yeah, time will tell on that. Time will tell on that front, and I think that's it for part one. And in part two, we'll switch from off the pitch to on the pitch. Have a quick look at the City players who've been in action on international duty and how that sort of break has impacted City moving forward to the resumption of Premier League football this weekend. Welcome back to part two of our Talking City podcast. We're going to break from the tradition of probably recent podcasts where we've been off the field led and do a bit of talk about actual football, Simon. And controversial as that is, perhaps even more so in an international break where we haven't seen any Manchester City football. But what we did see was, I don't want to say the rejuvenation because that's not the right word, but the Jack Grealish coming to the fore for England under Lee Carsley, who evidently is a fan. Grealish has gone from not being in the squad in the summer to suddenly almost a key player scoring goals for England under Carsley, and he's been, I would say, quietly effective. Would you say for City this season? He seems to be. He's always a player that we like to talk about, and that the media in general will talk about during his time at City and previously. But he seems to be rediscovering a little bit of form and perhaps a little bit of enjoyment as well. I know you did a piece on just that topic today on the MEM website.
Yeah, he's a player that he does not want to be judged by goals or assists, and sort of Pep doesn't want to judge him by goals or assists, but at the same time, they make things so much easier
Yeah.
because people say, "Oh, Jack Grealish scored. He played well." And if he still has an infuriating habit at City of sort of never being involved in a goal or assist while playing well for 90 minutes. Sort of like he'll be involved in loads of good stuff, but none of it leads to anything, spectacular. And then say Rico Lewis will play a 5-yard sideways pass to Jeremy Doku and he runs up the pitch and slaps one in from 25 yards. It's like, oh, Lewis is really good. He's got another assist. So Grealish is always kind of fighting those expectations, but he has looked sharper this season. He's looked more direct, sort of causing defenders problems. That's always when he's playing well, he's causing defenders problems. However, he chooses to do that, and it's helped him that in an England shirt he's gone away and he scored against Ireland and he scored against Finland and he's looked very good and he's looked happy. And the piece on the site today is sort of about him when he got dropped by England in the summer. He kind of came back and said, "Oh yeah, I've got a point to prove. I need to prove a point." And he does, but at the same time, he's kind of responded well to being loved. And Guardiola has shown him a lot of love, sort of since he joined, basically. And even last season when he was struggling, Pep was the one sort of helping him through it as best as he could. But he's also the guy that decides you're not playing this week. So there's kind of got to be a line to that. So it'd just be interesting to see going forward how Grealish acts. Does Grealish still feel like he's got a point to prove? Because sort of in a way he does, because he's only had 1 out of 3 good seasons at City, so he needs to make this a good one. But at the same time, is he just going to play better naturally because he's happier? So I think he's done well for City this season, and he should be looking to kick on now and go from strength to strength for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's become a dad as well. Evidenced by his goal celebration and for England the other day, the classic goal, or one of the 2 classics, probably the pretend dummy or the rocking the baby are the usual suspects for new dads or new mums when celebrating football goals. But that settled at home, evidently or often leads to improved performances in any walk of life. So another reason to smile for Jack.
Yeah, it's amazing how many City players have sort of had kids in sort of the 15 months after winning the treble or something like that. Yeah, Erling Haaland celebrating a pregnancy as well last week, wasn't he? So, and Kovacic dedicating his 2 goals at Fulham to his, I think, very soon to be born child. So, yeah, it's a very productive team.
I think we're going straight into a somewhat different podcast now.
Yes, yeah, but yeah, it all. It's we don't like to think of footballers as humans, because they're paid 900,000 a week, and we should all give them soldiers' wages and rah rah rah. But Grealish was kind of disrupted last year by the break-in at his house while he was playing and his family were in the house when he just moved around December. So these things off the field do have an impact on your performance. So it seems like he's in a happy place right now with his football and with his life. So hopefully that can all sort of come to a nice balance.
Yeah, absolutely. How lovely that would be. Another player, City player in action over the last few days, and also in the headlines every week was Erling Haaland. You touched on it now, and in terms of, we mentioned there judging Grealish by goals and assists. We rightly judge Haaland by goals, but it doesn't always stop the negative headlines. And his Norway side were thrashed, drubbed, humbled on the weekend by by Austria, which will have little to no impact for Manchester City, I'm sure. Albeit it did lead Haaland to offer something of a social media statement, kind of apologising for the result. But he did break another record. For those of us who are counting Haaland's record, we'll need another whiteboard or another sheet of paper to write the latest one down on. But he's been in the goals. I know he hasn't scored the last couple of games for City, but that Norway showing will have no impact, will it? And I guess the goal and the pride he takes as well from the performances for Norway, even in that defeat, and the responsibility he takes, just kind of show how driven he is and what kind of a person and player he is as well.
Yeah, I think it's the responsibility that's been big these last 2 weeks, because he's sort of stepped up as captain with Odegaard out injured, which means more media duties than he would normally give. I don't think the Norwegian reporters could quite believe it that they got an audience with him last week. So sort of all sorts of questions were thrown at him, and he was sort of talking about a brilliant answer. He was asked about if he regretted throwing the ball at Gabriel's head, and he replied and said, "I don't regret much in life," which was a nice response. But yeah, it's kind of football in a nutshell. He's top of the world last week when he scores 2 goals against Slovenia, and then they get spanked 5-1 at Austria, and he as captain doesn't stop to give his thoughts on the game, and suddenly he's sort of hero to zero. It's a very prickly topic with Norway, because I think there's a sense, or he feels there is a sense that people think he doesn't like playing for Norway and will sort of try and get out of games if possible, whereas he says he's absolutely desperate to play for them and to sort of lead them to a major championship, which they've not done in his lifetime, I don't think. He's
98 is the last kind of Norway team I can remember getting to a World Cup.
It was either 98 or 2000 before he was born, but one of those. And yeah, he's desperate to go. But they're not a nation that has been blessed with tremendous results. They are actually joint top of their Nations League group for now. So, I mean, it doesn't count for loads, but they have put some good results together. I think they beat Austria. They've beaten Austria and Slovenia, who they're in a group with. So, they still have a chance of winning their group, but it was kind of back down to earth in Austria after, the joy of Haaland breaking the record and picking up a win the other day. So, yeah, I mean, he's the sort of player that's just going to brush that off and move on. He doesn't regret much in life. But, yeah, I mean, from a City point of view, the fact that him and all the England lads are now finished and I've got a few days before they join up with the rest of the group. I feel like England have always played really late in these windows. So they're always kind of like last back, whereas this time they've actually got a few days to be fresh. So I would be expecting Haaland and the England boys to be raring to go for Sunday.
Yeah, in terms of the sort of players impacted the most, if nothing else, by travel and time, it's Brazil, who are always seem to be playing at 3:00 in the morning our time, as on the last possible available day of the international fixture calendar, which obviously is Savinho and Edison. And I think who's playing Tuesday night? Is it Croatia? I think
Croatia and Portugal, maybe.
And Portugal, yeah, that group. So there will be a few tired players, both physically and mentally, getting back to City. But I mean, this is part of the course for these guys. They're playing Saturday, Tuesday all the time anyway, in different competitions in different countries for their club. And B, City, for once, feel like they've got the better end of the return to fixtures by playing on the Sunday afternoon as opposed to the Saturday, where sometimes you do feel like they get a raw deal from the television schedule. But this time around, they've avoided a we've avoided a 12:30 Saturday or even a Saturday full stop, and they don't play until Sunday afternoon, which can only be a good thing as well.
Yeah, you'd like to see that sort of extra day of trying to get a bit of rhythm back in everyone would work to their favour, and they've like you say, they've avoided the sort of nightmare Saturday 12:30 spot.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and obviously it returns on Sunday. Wolves away, and then as we've touched on a couple of times, the fixtures are coming thick and fast. The Champions League's back next midweek, and then it's Premier League, Champions League, all the way until Carling Cup or League Cup. Is it Carling Cup still?
Carabao.
Carabao. Come on, I'm stuck in.
How can you forget your energy drinks?
Yeah, I'm stuck on my alcohol. I haven't dropped down to the energy drink yet.
Yeah.
So the fixtures will come thick and fast, and we'll sort of wrap up this podcast here. But Simon will be back on Friday, I think, with another edition ahead of the game with Wolves. Possibly joined by myself again. We'll have to see on the international break staffing situation at Manchester Evening News, but often a time for our reporters to grab a few days off while the City action is a little bit lighter. But as ever, you can keep up to date with everything online or wherever you get your Manchester Evening News fix from, on WhatsApp and social media. Plenty of content to keep you busy once I get that plug out of the way for everybody, and we'll leave it there for now. Thanks as ever for listening. Thanks to Simon for his insight, and we'll see you all soon pre Wolves. Thanks for now.